And a good Sunday morning to you. Thank you for watching Beyond the Headlines. Last year, 406 District Court Judge Oscar Hale announced he would not seek re-election. That announcement prompted both David Garcia and Rene Benavides to throw their hat into the ring to become the next judge. But come March 5th, only one of them is going to be on the ballot. And in a surprise twist, it was the application itself that removed Benavides from the ballot. KGNS News anchor Mindy Caso has the details as to what happened.
After submitting an open records request to the Webb County Democratic Party, KGNS News received both applications to take a closer look, immediately seeing a big difference. Turns out, back on September 1st, 2023, Section 141.0311 of the Texas Elections Code was changed by the Texas legislature, now requiring additional information from judicial candidates, thus changing the application from a single page to a double page. In an email acquired by KGNS News from the Secretary of State's Elections Office to the Webb County Democratic Chair, Sylvia Bruni, the elections attorney specifically says, if a candidate for district judge uses the single-page application for a place on the primary ballot instead of the two-page judicial candidate application for a place on the primary ballot, then the county chair is required to reject the candidate's application. Well, that single-page application turned in by Benavides on the final day applications were due on December 11th and signed by the Webb County Democratic Chair's secretary. Also in the email is a link for judicial candidates with information on how to run for judicial office, including a YouTube webinar with instructions made available to judicial candidates back on November of 2023. Benavides does have one more option, though, if he intends to continue in the race. That option is running as a write-in candidate. The deadline to submit his name and pay the application fee is 5 p.m. on August the 19th.
Well, KGNS reached out multiple times to Benavides for a comment, but did not receive a response. And so that's where we're beginning our discussion this morning. But first, let me introduce our panel. KGNS contributor and former Webb County Democratic Party chair. That's going to be relevant here in just a little bit. Sergio Mora. We have KGNS news anchor and investigative reporter and the author of that package, Mindy Caso. KGNS general manager, Luis Villarreal. So, Mindy, this was your package, and Sergio has a lot of insight into this whole situation. So you start where you want.
You know, I was a little disappointed. I'm just going to, start off with saying I was a little disappointed that Mr. Benavides would not talk to us. When I mentioned that we reached out to him several times through text, phone calls, we even physically went, looking for him, and he wouldn't talk to us. And I would have liked to have heard from him to see, just what his thoughts were on what happened, and if he does plan on running as a write-in candidate. He also had the opportunity to file a lawsuit, which we understand he did not. So it would have been nice to have heard back from him, but he didn't return our calls. He would have sued I believe it's the Webb County chair for, and you're going to go into that in just a little bit, for rejecting his ballot. So other than that, it was really interesting because the Texas legislature, like I said in the piece, just now made that change in judicial application. So basically, on September 1st, what they're now wanting, if you plan on running to be a judge, they want more history. They want, per se, a resume that shows what kind of law you've practiced, have you had any sanctions against you. It's kind of just asking for, some 5 to 7 years of background as a lawyer, whereas the applications prior to that did not ask for any of that information. So that was the big change in the application. It goes from a 1-page to a 2-page. And you can actually even add, addendums to that if you have that much information. But the application that he submitted was the 1-page. So, and he was also not the only one in Texas that the Secretary of State decertified. There was another candidate, a judicial candidate in Houston, that also suffered the same consequences.
Where do you get the application, and why is that 1-page still available? If it's
because the 1-page application is for every other candidate who's running for any other office.
So it's still an active
form. Yeah, it's an active form,
Okay.
and the form still has a date of 2023 on the left-hand corner. So that's the form that if you're going to run for county attorney, you're going to run for the tax assessor,
so it's a form
else.
especially for the judicial.
And as a matter of fact, I know it's kind of hard to see, but if you zoom in, the title of that application says judicial candidate application, whereas the prior form just says application. So and those applications, Ruben, to answer your question, are available on the Secretary of State's website.
Sergio, how would you have handled this situation, or let's talk about the Democratic Party chair in this case?
Yeah, it's very clear. I was sued like 3 or 4 times for ballot removal issues. The Democratic Party chairman, the election authority, whether it be Democrat, Republican, whatever, the one that's accepting the applications, they don't have the right to make the determination whether a person is eligible, whether that person meets the requirements to run.
They're not vetting the application.
Yeah, what they do is and this is in the election code, the chairman, the election authority checks for form, content, and procedure, and it's done on the spot. You review every application, because this is not like, oh, gotcha, you're out. You know, this is like, we're gonna help you.
So you sit there in front of them and you go through
Yeah,
it.
and you go through clerical errors, typos, you filled this out in the wrong spot, this is the wrong format. The number one, form, content, and procedure, the number one form specifically says, the election authority will check to see if the form is in good shape, if it is the correct form. And so in this case, Rene should have been told when he submitted the application, this is the wrong form, fulfilling the election authority's duties to check for form, content, and procedure. So it's right there in the election code. People are told to apply early, because when they do that check and something is wrong,
You gotta go
the
back.
chair gives it back to the person. Like, hey, you messed up here. You messed up on the signatures. You didn't you didn't number the pages of all the signatures that you collected, and it's a requirement. So he should have been given that form, said, this is the wrong form. You have an hour, a day, whatever, fix it and bring it back to me.
So the question that I have is, first of all, who is the Democratic chair?
Sylvia Bruni.
Okay. And is that who received this this form?
No. So on
Why
the day that Mr. Garcia submitted his form, it was signed by Sylvia Bruni, and you can see on the application that it was signed by her. On the day that, and he submitted it according to the form on December the 4th. Rene's application was submitted by him on December 11th, and that was the deadline to file for that position, and it's signed by her secretary.
And is
So-
that appropriate as in your is that procedurally correct?
A lot of people wait till the last day.
No, what I'm talking about is that the signature was from the secretary and not from the chair.
I am not familiar with that. I mean, you're talking about, you have 30 people, 40 people running for office in a crazy year. I don't think this
Because
is
it's the
that
deadline
crazy.
for every county
Yeah.
position that's
Yeah,
that's running.
exactly.
So
I think it should have been done by the chair.
But I guess my question is about the procedural snafu that could have taken place. So there's my understanding that Ms. Bruni was not in the office because she was out of the office, traveling or something like that. I'm not entirely sure. So is the secretary authorized to sign that form, first of all, or to review the form, or does it have to be done by the chair directly?
That I'm not sure. When I was there, I did every.
Why were
every
you sued
form.
4 times?
That's different because, for example, it was a challenge on residency. Okay, the person that filed for this office says that he meets the residency requirements. He's lived in the county 10 years in that address 10 years. But then somebody came up with public record that contradicts what he stated.
Okay, so you're not sued by the person that submitted the form. You're being sued by somebody who is challenging the
Exactly. They're like,
format, right.
I'm suing you to take that person
You need to take
off.
that person off because
the ballot.
they lied on the
Yeah.
form or
Got it.
whatever. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I do want to note that on that email that we received from the Democratic chair that she received from the Secretary of State's office that we used in the story, it clearly does say that that it is not exactly what you said right now. It's not an eligibility. It's because of the
It's a procedural thing. Yeah.
So they're not saying that he didn't meet any kind of criteria
Exactly.
to be a judge. They just said that he filled out the wrong form.
Yeah, you get disqualified, you get removed from the ballot, and I'm going to reword. you do make that determination. If an application says 10 years, da-da-da, and someone's like, no, this person was registered to vote outside of the state for 4 of those years. So when election matters, where you're registered to vote is very important in terms of where you claim your residency. So if you claim it for 4 years outside of the state, that means that statement that you made, that you were 10 concurrent years living here, it's wrong, it's false. And so then the person can file, like, no, I did live there, da-da-da-da. It's like, yeah, but ultimately you were registered to vote over there. So then you get removed from the ballot. You don't meet the qualifications. But if you made a mistake in filling out the form, the chair is supposed to help you. Like, you made a mistake here, here, and here, fix it, bring it back before the
Quick question, and
deadline.
then I'm going to wrap up. Are you surprised he didn't sue?
I'm very surprised.
Yeah.
Because it's
Who would he sue, though?
the chair.
He's the
It's like,
Democratic
why
chair.
did you remove me?
Well, you removed me because you brought me the wrong form. Well, you should have told me, right? Is that the
That
thing?
is correct. It is your duty
It
to
is your-
tell me form, content, procedure, and the form part says make sure they turned in the correct form.
Yeah.
So I'm shocked he didn't sue.
And we're learning a lot about elections. As a
Yeah.
matter of fact, at the time of this airing, there is breaking news in regard to the Daisy Campos Rodriguez Richie Rangel case. That has been settled. By the time this airs,
Yeah.
you'll already know what the result of that was. So we've learned a lot about the elections process here recently
Yeah.
in Gateway City. All right. When we come back, the standoff between the federal government and the state of Texas continues even after a Supreme Court ruling last week. But Texas says it has a constitutional right to defend itself. We'll discuss the latest development on the border next. All right, welcome back to Beyond the Headlines. Thank you so much for being with us. Despite a Supreme Court ruling made last Monday, Texas continued to add more razor wire as part of its border security efforts. In a 5-4 vote, the closely divided court granted an emergency request filed by the Biden administration, who argued that the wire prevents agents from reaching migrants who have already crossed over. But even after that ruling, Governor Greg Abbott issued a new invasion declaration and asserted the state's constitutional authority to defend and protect itself. Republican governors all across the country showed support for that position. That's while the White House pushed the issue and ordered the state to allow federal agents to cut wire or face consequences. It's the latest development in an escalating feud between the two, and that's where we begin, or that's where we continue this morning's discussion. I'm no political pundit, don't know much about politics, but this might be an issue for the elections in November.
Totally.
Sarcasm, Serge, come on.
Okay, got
Work
it,
with me here, all right.
I was like, what?
This has turned into quite the battle between the federal government and the state of Texas, and you see the Republican governors grabbing onto Abbott's coattails and saying, "Hey, we're with you." So, Serge, what say
They
you?
already have a slogan, "Hold the line," which is going viral, obviously. This is this is on track to become the next desegregation era, where federal troops were facing off with state troops. It's a horrible precedent, and like you said, it's all election year politics. And the reality of the situation, and the Wall Street Journal published a great report on this last year in terms of the effectiveness of Operation Lone Star, in terms of, okay, what numbers are you putting up? What numbers are you putting up in comparison to the Border Patrol and to federal agents? And they're minute. They're a tiny, tiny fraction of the work that the Border Patrol is doing. But you would imagine that Operation Lone Star is doing more than the federal government in patrolling the border. That's not true. They're doing a big spectacle in patrolling the border. Like, look how cruel we are with all this wire, and we're going to hold them back, hold the line. It's an invasion.
In a 3 mile
Yeah, exactly.
portion of the, I don't know how wide the.
Because it's only, it's the
It's a
Eagle
park.
Pass.
Yeah.
It's just the
It's
Shelby
just a
Park
park.
of Eagle Pass.
You know,
Yeah.
it is. You know what? I almost took the day off today because I really don't want to talk about this anymore. I am so sick and tired of these spectacles.
Yeah.
On both sides of this thing, and it's going to get worse now that I guess we practically have the nominee on the Republican side who's already affecting what's happening in Congress right now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, it is, you know, you get encouraged a little bit. You know, you had a bipartisan visit to Mexico that you say, okay, fine, you know, okay, so we're making some progress. And then, págatelas. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, it's all a big show. I don't know more, no matter how you look at it. So.
Yeah, that news about Trump already starting to infiltrate, you know, and talk to his GOP supporters, you know, it was just hard to hear and hard to report on that he's already telling them what to do and that they're following him.
So the buses were a spectacle. You're saying this is a spectacle. What isn't a spectacle is the fact that 8.4 million people
That's not a
have
spectacle.
entered the country illegally since Biden became president.
That's not a spectacle. I mean,
And
well,
nobody's doing anything about that.
Well, you're talking about what the number that they cite is encounters. Encounters is when an agent encounters a person, apprehends them, deports them, etc. So that's like 3 million this year. But that doesn't count the people that try it again when they're rebuffed. So that would automatically, they try it again, that's 2 encounters. They try it again, that's 3 encounters. That's still a significant, very large, unacceptable number. And that doesn't count the number of people that just plainly evade encounters.
And don't get encountered.
And
Right.
don't get encountered.
Right.
Which, in my opinion, would be a lot higher than the actual encounters. Because ultimately, this is a business in terms of the smugglers that get these people across. Their rate of success has to be high in order for it to be a feasible business.
But the reality, Sergio, as Ruben points out, is, okay, so this is a show. And I don't agree that the buses are a show. I think the buses...
No, I'm not saying that they were a show. I'm saying that's what Sergio called them, and that's what many people are saying, that's a show. Just
No,
a
I-
spectacle.
Right, no, but I think that the buses, that strategy, was a strategy? Yes. Was
Yeah.
it a calculated strategy? Yes. But I think the buses served the purpose of
Showing
some of the people, hey,
Yeah.
you know, now, do you have to send them to those specific places? Okay, well, that was
Yeah.
strategy, right?
Yeah.
But showing the rest of the country what
we go
what
through.
we go through and what
Yeah.
our institutions go through and
challenges.
NGOs and all that stuff by having to deal with this, I don't think that's show. 3 miles or bordering a park in Eagle Pass is a show.
Now, that's strategy, because can you imagine them trying to do that here in Laredo? They picked Eagle Pass for a reason.
Oh, well, I understand, but
you know,
for
but that's
show-
strategy and show. So I think they're all
Yeah,
strategy and
but-
show. There's a little bit of each in both.
But I mean, if your goal was to raise public awareness of this, then the bus issue was successful. A public relations strategy.
We give them a win.
But no, successful in raising the awareness
Right.
and having New York and Chicago say, man, we can't take it
California.
Do you
anymore.
think that?
But-
let me
but-
hang on.
Yeah.
Before you move on from this, would you? He's not going to go over there, but would you say, good job, Governor Abbott, on the buses?
Well, I think that the
would.
problem that the Democrats are having is that we can no longer say that this isn't a very big problem that needs to be addressed.
Okay.
But we need to look for solutions that work.
Right.
What is the show is Abbott deploying the National Guard and concertina wire in Del Rio, because if you
Eagle
really
Pass.
want
Eagle Pass.
in Eagle Pass, because if you really want to stop immigration, that's proven to be not effective at all.
Okay, but
that's
he's forcing
my
Biden's
point.
hand here.
Right.
He's making Biden do something, whether it's to send the federal government down to the border now. Biden's got to do something. The ball's in his court regardless of what is happening.
Well,
But
mean,
why
and
hasn't
yes,
the concertina wire been effective? Since they put it up, have the numbers dropped, you know, in crossings, though? Is that what they're showing, and that's why they don't want to cut it down?
They use the image of a water balloon when talking about immigration and drugs. When you get a water balloon, you squeeze one part, what happens?
It goes to the other side.
So if you're talking
feels
about a
weird.
border that's thousands of miles long, and you're like, we're gonna really patrol these 15 miles. Well, guess what, man?
But, you know, but it's those 15 miles or the 3 miles that
Yeah.
have been in the news, and those are the images that we see.
Yeah.
We haven't seen them in other places. So,
No,
you know.
we have. We saw it happens in Matamoros with the Haitians. It happened in Del Rio. It's happened.
And
it's
it happened
happened
here
in
at
El
one point.
Paso.
Yeah.
Yeah, this kind of stuff, these hot flashes have happened very repeatedly. They just decided that Eagle Pass was going to be, and I think it has specifically to do with that park, in that it's just wide open space, and it was being
And it's
used
city
very
property, from
liberal.
what I understand.
Yeah, and it's
Yes.
they can cross it a little easier there
Yes,
too.
exactly.
Okay, got to wrap up here. When we come back, it's the one thing our panelists cannot stop thinking about from the past week. Stay with us.
I think.
All right, welcome back to Beyond the Headlines. It's the one thing our panelists cannot stop thinking about. Surge.
Well, next week on Friday, February 2nd, the eyes of the world are going to be on Punxsutawney Phil once again, to see if he sees his shadow, which means there will be 6 more weeks of winter. PETA, the ethical treatment of animals,
my God.
says that it's time to let poor Phil hibernate and burrow and do the things that groundhogs do. And instead, they're offering to give them a coin that they could flip to determine what the weather prediction is
And if the
going to be.
coin sees its shadow,
Because unfortunately, Punxsutawney Phil is not a really good meteorologist. His success rate is 40%. So what Peter's saying, like, look, flip a coin and you're probably going to get a better prediction.
Gotcha.
Let this poor guy just go play
It's
with
not like
his
it's the
buddies.
same guy every year, people.
It is the same guy.
No, it's
yeah,
not.
Yeah.
All right, Luis.
Punxsutawney Phil, man.
It's me?
Yes, you.
Tawny.
Oh, so, okay, so I know, so everybody's heard about the whole problem with Boeing and the accident Alaska Airlines had, the, almost, potentially fatal thing that happened as a door plug flew off of their fuselage in mid-flight. And so then the FAA grounded all the MAX 9s and so on and so forth. But apparently, as of today, I believe the MAX 9 is back in service. And I guess what's been on my mind is this is another example of all those things that we take for granted in what we use. We go to restaurants and we assume that the restaurant is clean and that everybody's, doing the work. You assume that you get on a plane that was properly built and properly inspected and all those things. And it just seems that more and more of these issues are coming to light with people not doing their jobs properly. I mean, do you blame Boeing? Yes, but more to that is the people on the line of the production line that say, well, I'm not going to twist that very hard, or whatever. And I think it just goes to show a lack of
Urgency.
care for your job and for what you do and how important it is, particularly, when you are serving such an important industry. But
that's
Life-
why robots are taking over the world.
and you know what? Serves us right.
Yeah.
If we can't do this
Indeed.
properly, might as well.
Okie doke. So my one thing this week isn't anything as dramatic as that. I want to recommend everybody out there, if you've got some time, you've got to watch The Bear. It is such a great, phenomenal, binge-worthy series. The characters are all interesting. They're very dimensional. And the show is actually about a family-run restaurant. So it's actually what happens behind the scenes. It's really good. It won so many Emmys. It was just nominated for 13. It won 10 of them, including Outstanding Director, Lead Actor, Supporting Actor, and Supporting Actress. So it took all the really good ones. So if you get a chance to watch it,
Have
it's
you watched it?
really good. I have binged the
Binged it?
first season and the second season. Third season
Can
is...
I borrow your Hulu password?
True, it is on Hulu. Third season has already been promised.
All right.
So.
All right, for the first time in 31 years, WWE Raw is not going to be on linear TV starting in 2025. This is a big deal. 31 years WWE Raw has been on linear TV. Netflix is making a push into live sports with a $5 billion deal. They're going to stream WWE Raw starting in 2025. We're already seeing this in NFL with the Peacock exclusively airing certain playoff games. This is a huge deal, and this is where the networks are going, as you know. But WWE Raw is like a staple of wrestling fans, and for it to now only be available on Netflix,
You're going to have to pay for it.
yeah,
It's going to be an
You want
interesting
it.
race to the top of this.
it's going to be very interesting. Thank
We'll
you
see how
all
that
very
works.
much for this week, and thank you for watching. Have a blessed rest of your Sunday.
Go Lions.